Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm Councillor Michael Chinnery of Horsburgh, Chair of the Norfolk Records Committee. I would like to welcome you all to this meeting and quickly go over some general housekeeping. This meeting is being held in person at County Hall and is also being streamed live on the County Council's YouTube channel. The recording will also be available to view afterwards. A fire alarm test is not expected during the meeting. If the alarm sounds, we must evacuate County Hall. And in the event of an emergency, please make your way to the nearest exit and meet at the muster point located on the main car park. Microphone, and I must say I'm rather bad at this as well. When using your microphone, please make sure it is switched on and speak towards it. This will tell the camera to focus on you and ensure you can be heard on the live stream. When you have finished speaking, please push the button to turn off your microphone, as this will allow the system to pick up the next speaker. And straight away, apologies for absence. I'll go over to Lane.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies today from Councillor Michael Gill, Councillor Saul Penfold, Councillor Ben Price, Dr Claire Haynes and Reverend Charles Reid. Thank you.
And Councillor Beth Jones.
Yep. Duly noted.
Yeah, thank you. Minutes. To approve the minutes of the meeting held on Friday, 25th of July, 2025. Do we have approval? Yes. I will sign in a minute. Updates from the chair. Well, I think I have one thing to say, and I would like to welcome Councillor Sue Litton from the Borough Council of Kings Lynn and West Norfolk. Welcome. And this is your first meeting as members of the Norfolk Records Committee. You will probably be offered a tour at some point, you know. Have you?
It's already happened.
It's all done. You're too quick. Yeah, thank you. Members to declare any interest. Well, are there any members to declare any interest? Well, it's just myself as a trustee of the Norfolk Record Office charity. So that's it. Yes. Nobody else. No. Right. Well, straight away, I can refer to Gary now, over to the item 5, finance and risk.
Thank you, Chair. So this is our periodic update on where our budget stands and where our risk register is. So if you turn to page 13 on the report, that has the position with our revenue budget, and we're pretty much predicting a balanced budget for the end of the year, which I'm still reasonably confident we will achieve. The issue always with our revenue budget is the service relies very heavily on our income generation. It's roughly 40% of our expenses are covered by income we generate. So obviously, as you progress through the year, you have to keep an eye on the level of income coming in all the time. But it's looking okay. And then reserves, there has been a change in the reserves position, because as part of the preparations for our move to additional accommodation in 2028, we've got a 3-year programme due to start next year of packaging and preparing. And this year on our service plan, we are getting ready for that programme. So we're testing out systems and testing out boxes. So we've been buying materials to help us with that process. And that's come from a reserve which we had for the strong rooms, basically. Yeah. I'll be buying lots of barcodes from that soon. Risk. There hasn't been a huge movement in the risk register. The one which really of note is risk RM 14389, which relates to our archive accreditation. This is the scheme run by the National Archives and the Archives Records Association, which is our, if you like, our quality stamp. It's very, very important because it is the basis on which, well, one, which we say we're a good service. You know, we meet acceptable levels of service delivery, preservation, public access, and governance. And governance always scores highly because I report to a joint committee. So, you know, that's seen as a very good way of governing a service by the accreditors. But when we last met, we had interim review and people were coming. But since then, I've been notified that we have secured the next stage of our accreditation. So we'll be doing a full review again in 2 or 3 years' time. But therefore, you know, that risk doesn't apply anymore because we've secured the accreditation. Just to run through very quickly the actual risk register. So we've got the provision of collection storage space to 2027. So if there are issues with us extending, moving into new accommodation, we have a way of knocking the problem back by a couple of years by moving rooms around and that sort of thing. And that's still there as a contingency plan. But I think the need for that contingency plan is declining as we go along, because the next one is provision of storage space after 2027, and things are still progressing well on that front. So, as I was just saying, you know, we're doing the preparatory work to get ready for the project, to get ready for the move. On page 16, data risk. We talked about this before, but this is where we have a system where periodically we take a snapshot of the databases containing our catalogue information, put it on a hard disk and put it in the strong rooms. So it's offline. And as I'm sure everybody's aware, there are incidents recently where there have been sort of huge impacts from hacks and people getting into systems. Yeah. Digital preservation is just ongoing work, which we're always. It's always changing, it's a shifting landscape, but we have a system ready. We don't get a huge amount of digital deposits, but I am anticipating we might get a bit of an influx when local government reorganisation starts, because lots of those records will be digital. And I draw a distinction between digitised records, and I'm not talking about those, I'm talking about born digital records, you know, things which we all hold on our computers and servers. And it looks like Councillor Kai Bird is about to ask a question.
Thank you. I think my question is, have we notified the relevant chief executives that they will need to put this in their forward plan, that records are secured at the very least?
I think everything is going to swing into action on that front as soon as we know where we're going. Yeah, and I think because I've got a number of concerns around local government reorganisation. You know, and one of the things which I highlighted in this committee is just the fact that potentially we've got loads and loads of stuff coming to us, and we don't have the resources to deal with it, no matter what happens. But my other professional concern is that things will get destroyed and lost, and parts of our, well, cultural heritage and historic heritage will be lost, important material, but also important records for us functioning as an efficient democratic county, because people's rights are contained in those records, as well as the economic impact of losing old contract documents.
I have had a chat about this at City Hall, and the feeling there seems to be that where records have been stored around the county, that would probably remain the same. I mean, you will get an influx, obviously, and I don't know what's going to happen to County Hall, who knows. But that's what I was told at the time. Now, things change. I mean, we won't know till January whether we've got 1, 2 or 3. But I did ask that, I think, fairly early on when I was put on the committee, and I was reassured that where they're being stored currently, so they have relation to the area that they are part of, would remain the same. Hopefully, that continues.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully everything's going to run really smoothly and it's all going to be in place. But well, I think, as you say, until we actually know what format it's likely to take, which should be in March next year, isn't it? When Westminster are due to... Yeah, but then the whole issue moves on to its next stage, doesn't it? Because there will be the sort of a board, is it a board is being established which manages that process until there are the shadow authority elections. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be a two-tier system with the shadow authority and other councillors continuing behind day-to-day stuff.
So moving on, collection access data. This is just about the risk that it's almost like a customer expectation risk in that cataloguing is so central to what we do in providing access to our collection, and there's a constant need for creating that data, and it's the actions which we take to try and keep up with that everlasting task, because there is so much. But also, if we're interested in opening access as widely as possible, for some collections there's a real need for low-level data. There'll be a good example later in my other report about how detailed metadata can lead to exciting discoveries. Skills, knowledge and absences. This is a risk relating to the need for lots of different skills in staff. We've talked before about paleography skills, but relevant to what we were saying just now, digital skills are incredibly important nowadays as well. We're managing huge amounts of data and need to manipulate that. Pressure on the service, because we do operate on a much reduced level of staffing, so any absences can have a large impact. And we've always got to think of succession planning as well, because people do grow old and retire. But that's something which is on the risk register. It's good to have on the risk register because it keeps it keeps the profile of that risk high. And then I don't need to talk any more about the risk on page 18 because we've just been talking about local government reorganisation, which I'm keeping as a high red risk because there is that uncertainty about the record impact of it. And that's my report.
Rather quick today. Oh, well, we've been asked to consider and comment on. Sorry?
Catherine wants to come in.
Oh, Catherine, apologies.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question really on page 15 about the capital bid for storage space. What is is there a time scale for when you expect that to be achieved? I mean, it says the target date of March 26. Is that when you're expecting to? And does that cover the whole of the funding needs for the storage space?
Yeah, that's progressing. The process will not be an individual capital bid for this project, but money is being allocated, obviously until council votes on next year's capital budget. I don't know anything for certain, but within the future building programme, money for this project is being allocated. So, yeah, which I'm very pleased about.
I presume by the prospects of meeting it being green that you're confident that it will all pan out.
Yes, yes. I mean, if it hopefully, yes, yeah.
Can I just go back to the table on page 13, the revenue budget? This is a very pedantic point, I know, but can we get rid of these meaningless brackets for the future, or else explain what they are supposed to mean, and instead use the plus and minus signs as the head of the final column indicates, to indicate overspends and underspends?
all I can say to that is that's standard practice, because I don't prepare the financial reports, so that's the standard practice of NCC Finance Department, and I think that probably is the same for all financial reports in Norfolk.
I think the pedantic point is that the column heading is plus or minus, but the actuality is brackets or no brackets.
Okay, yes, fair enough, yeah. So it really should be indicating in the column heading that the bracket means minus. Would you?
Any further questions?
Okay, thank you. So this is an update on our work over the last 6 months. There are a couple of things which I'm going to slip in, I'm afraid, which aren't in the report, which stick outside of that period, but you know they're just for your information. It's structured along the lines of our service plan, which we looked at the meeting before last. So it has a series of aims throughout it, and those tie in with our long-term objectives. So the first section, starting at 3.1, is where we enable new audiences and benefit from the use of archives. So we obviously want to get new users for our collection and benefiting from it. So 3.1, I think it was the last committee, we had a discussion about how the Record Office reaches people in disadvantaged communities. And I think my response was, well, we're not a large enough organisation to strategically have a large impact on this, but we try it through the way we work with partnerships. And I think 3.1 is a good example of how we do that. So the Norwich Science Festival, which takes place in the Forum usually, realised that not everybody will attend if it's in the Forum, and they had an event at Henderson Community Park instead. And so we attended that and took part in that. So, yeah, well, as it says, Norwich Science Festival on your doorstep. So, I mean, that's a good example of how we work with partnerships to try and meet that objective. 3.2 is completely different. In May, we had the Norwich Culture Community and Church Conference, which Professor Rawcliffe is smiling because you were one of our speakers, weren't you? Yeah, which was a really good day. It marked 20th anniversary, yeah, of the Norwich volumes which were published, edited by Carol and former member of this committee, Richard Wilson. Yeah, and 56, we had 83 people attending, as well as the actual day itself, which was really good, and I found it really informative. One of the things I like about, we've done a few of these now, where mainly the academics organise the speakers, which is great because they've got the connections, and we provide the facilities and facilitate it because we do it as a hybrid online as well. But we have the Norfolk Archives and Heritage Development Foundation, which Michael is a trustee of, but it gives us an opportunity. We have a supporters scheme for those, which costs a mere £25 a year. And members of the supporters scheme get free ticket for this sort of event. So it's a really good thing for keeping people as members of the supporters scheme. 3.3 is about various school activities. So I think I've been asked a number of times in this committee what we do with schools. So there's some details of what we've been doing. 3.4, strangely enough, we do take part in Heritage Open Days. I think we'd be conspicuous by our absence. So we do things here and in King's Lynn. 3.5 is another new thing in this 6 months period, which for the last 4 or 5 years, we have been doing a project with UEA, with their MA Modern History students, where they were coming to us and we were training them to index Norwich Diocese consistory court deposition books, which are brilliant records. Yeah, but, you know, really fascinating, great details in them. But with staff reductions last year, I didn't have the resources to do that because it took quite a lot. So I spoke with people at UEA and we came up and basically we did something different, which I think has worked really well. So we had a volunteer blogger project. We have volunteer bloggers. I can recommend to you our blogging site. There's some great blogs on there, loads of them. Because we have this program of volunteer bloggers, we have loads of resources set up already, which are videos on YouTube, and there's a sort of like instruction guide. So in fact, from our staff resources point of view, we were able to direct students at that, and they had to register for an archives card and come in the search room, look at some documents and write a blog about it, as one of the modules on their MA course. For considerably less effort than what we were previously doing, we got some really good content, and we have 3 council members, 4 council members. There's 3 of us, are the 3 council members of the Norfolk Record Society here. But the Norfolk Record Society awarded a prize to the best, and a sort of commended prize to a second one as well, and a free volume as well. I don't know if they've received it yet. So it sort of gives I think it's a good thing for a student to have on their CV that they won a prize for blogging. So, yeah, it was really successful. I'm sure we'll be running it again next year. Volunteers. We have a very active volunteer programme. Actually, 3.7 shouldn't be under volunteers. There should be a gap there, I'm afraid. So, but one of the project's volunteers, they do lots of things. They do packaging. We have a packaging group who meets each month and does loads of repackaging of documents as a social event. But one of the projects we've been doing is the Great Yarmouth Prison Registers. This is where we're getting that low-level data. So rather than the catalogue saying, you know, Great Yarmouth Prison Register 1894 to 97, it actually says in the catalogue who all the prisoners are now and some details of them. So when people search the catalogue for a name, they can find those records or find those stuff of relevance in there. And we've added, from the volunteer work, we've added 5,600 entries to the catalogue recently. Yes, the next section isn't volunteers, sorry about that, but it's more publicity, I suppose. So in April, we had a recording at the record office. There's been a project which we been in, I suppose, a sort of partner in from the start. I say sort of partner because we haven't done a huge amount of work for it, where it's very much led by Royal Holloway College. But the project was looking at cataloguing music in record offices around the country. And what they were doing was they were going through catalogues and looking for things which looked like they might be music. And they identified a number of things from the record office and came and recorded a programme. Which they broadcast on Radio 3 as part of the essay at 10:15, I think it's usually on. Well, coming to that. And they... they featured the Milam Singer's book from 1795 and the Ballad of Hales Hall, which is a great, it's almost like a rant of discontent from a woman who had been dispossessed of the hall. But one of the things which was out for the programme, which didn't get used, was this Thetford Borough Council. It's an index book. So there's a chap called George Bird Burrell, who was, I think, was town clerk in the end of the 18th, early 19th century, and he bought second-hand this 17th century hardback red book, and he cut tabs out of it because he uses an index book for the minutes, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but he left the manuscript music, which is in the front of the back of the book. So we're looking at this. And subsequently, they identified that some of the pieces, well, there are two composers, John Blow and Henry Purcell, the music, 3 pieces by Henry Purcell, which was quite interesting. Yeah. But then after that, Stephen for Royal Holloway brought in a Purcell specialist to help him identify it. And it turns out, yes, they definitely are by Purcell, but they're also in his own hand. So these are first, I think there was a fragment discovered in Worcestershire by the same project, Purcell Music. These are the first discoveries of anything new by Purcell for 30 years, so very significant. And it's brilliant timing, because tonight on Radio 3, at 9:45, there is a truncated version of another county's song detectorists on Radio 3, but they're featuring a piece of music from the Norfolk Record Office being played on the harpsichord. So you'll be able to hear it tonight.
What time?
9:45. Yeah. And I've got the blurb here. Yeah, it's Purcell's G minor Allemande, which was only known, it was known before, but only in a printed version, which was printed after Purcell's death. And this version, strangely enough, but it's slightly different, and there's different accents and some different notes in it, so important discovery. Yeah, but I think that's it's had some good publicity. It was featured in The Guardian. It's been featured in some various classical music press. I think it was on the Radio 4 News one night. I haven't heard it, but yeah. But one of the things which it highlights for me is how even having a little bit of description can make a huge difference. So some collections would have been catalogued as Thetford Administrative Records with a date, because that's all we'd got into. The fact that this was catalogued as index book, covering the dates, with music, meant that there was enough of a clue for the experts to come in and actually make this discovery. Yeah, it's a very nice story, I think. So search room use, to go from lots of good.
Sorry for the interruption. Just going back to 3.1, we talk about the Norwich Science Festival on the doorstep at Henderson Community Pond. You talk there about the aim of the day was to reach people in areas who face barriers accessing events in the city centre. Did you get some sort of indication of the interest or the numbers of attendees, and any indication of the kind of barriers that they faced?
The barriers are those identified by the Science Festival, in that some kids just won't come into the city centre to things, that sort of thing. We have got, we always take information on the number of people. I'm afraid I don't have them to hand.
Gary, could I ask you about the blogs? I thought the blogs were fantastic. I should explain I was one of the judges for the Norfolk Record Society Prize, and they were excellent. And I'm just wondering how many people, do we know how many people actually read them? Do we have statistics for this? Because potentially it's a really good way to widen the, publicity for the Record Office and showcase what it does.
The readership is good. I mean, that's all relative. I'm just going to the blog site, because it might help me be able to sort of give you an answer. NRO blog. But we often get it's hundreds of people often who are reading them, and sometimes many more. Let me see. Oh, a brief history. I'm looking at an interesting history of Mosehoed Aerodrome, which was the first prize. And I'm just seeing if it says number of views on this one. If I can see it anywhere on the page. So this is very on the hoof, isn't it? There is data somewhere, but I can't see it at the moment. But yes, we get lots of readership, yeah. Because each time a new blog is published, it goes out to our mail list and it goes out on social media. but I can't see the actual individual numbers on here. We have 7,795 subscribers. So, you know, each of those people are notified when something goes out. So it's got quite a good reach, yeah.
Thank you. How many blogs were written?
6.
Could I suggest that you perhaps have a word with your museum colleagues, because they produce for their staff and for members, we get every other week a sort of news from the museums, and I was thinking the same sort of audience, if you could sort of have a little paragraph every so often on the blogs, and perhaps if there's any interesting blogs, that would at least get it out to members who can then perhaps give it to a wider audience as well.
Yes, I'll follow up on that.
Yeah, following up on the business of sort of reaching parts one hasn't otherwise reached, as it were, or, you know, the efforts you've made and your achievements in that area. One of the things that struck me recently, because of something I was doing, was I kept on coming across lots of what I would describe as popular history sites on localized history sites on places like Facebook and that sort of thing. And it seems to me that there are a number of them to do with Norwich, for example. And it seems to me that, you know, there's an enormous sort of sea of interest out there that's not coming into the record office, and, you know, is often quite bemused. I'm afraid at one point I did stop off and try to dispel some of the bemusement over something to do with distribution of churches in the city. But I think that, you know, trying to maybe just putting something, looking at identifying those sites at different places around the county, because Aylesham's got 2. I don't know how many Kings Lynn and Yarmouth have got, but I know Yarmouth has got some, certainly. And just putting something on those sites, you know, getting someone in the office to sign up to the site and then allowing them to place something on the site saying, you know, this is what's coming up, etc., etc. I think that would be a very good way of reaching out to parts that otherwise we don't reach, as it were.
Yes, no, that's a good suggestion. I mean, we've done a little bit of that sort of thing, but there are so many of them. One of the areas which we have done some work on is, a few years ago, we had this community archives, skills support and sustainability project, looking at community archives. And because from the other side of it, I have concerns that, you know, when Facebook is no longer with us, as may happen at some stage, or they delete a load of inactive sites, all that material will disappear. So we have guidance on archiving social media, which we made available to people through that. But yeah, but you know, these groups, lots of people are interested. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I follow the Norfolk Record Office on Facebook, obviously, but it doesn't. I don't often see the posts. I don't know, it just doesn't come up in my feed regularly. And I've just looked, and I've just seen there's 9 posts that I haven't seen since I last physically looked for it. I'm just wondering, who puts the posts on Facebook, and do they have training? Because I know there's certain times of the day when you should post to make like 7 o'clock in the morning so that it gets, you know, or 6 o'clock at night, or are they being targeted at the right times of day for people to see them? Because I'm conscious that I don't see this coming up, and I'm on Facebook quite a bit, but I don't see it.
Well, yeah, the short answer is yes, we do that sort of thing. You know, staff have attended training events, and they work on social media where they use a scheduling platform, so they don't have to be in the office. So I think some things, you know, there's a sweet spot in the early evening, suppose, but of course everybody knows that. So there are various times when they will try and put them out. I think the problem with something like Facebook, of course, is the algorithms which it works upon. It'd be interesting if you spent the next couple of months, every time you see a record office post, clicking on it and saying like and see if they move up. Because I mean, I don't know how the algorithms work, but the more you look at them and the more they're clicked, the more they move up the algorithms, don't they? I'm sure that's there, yeah.
No, just a concern that obviously if I'm not seeing it, then how many other people are not seeing it?
Well, yeah.
Because, yeah, I don't know how else to make it more visible, because you're right, you do tend to see the same things come up. Like I'm always going on EDP 24, so obviously anything new that comes on there I usually see, but I don't know if there's any other way of I think you can favourite sites and things like that.
Yes, you can do so, but it's very much
I can have to do that physically, but so I'm just concerned that other people aren't seeing it.
How about a couple of years? I just say, I think if I knew how to get to the top of people's feeds on social media, I probably wouldn't be sat here at the moment.
So one of the things Facebook do is offer you a top fan award, and if you sign up as a top fan, you get a weekly summary from that particular site. So that's one way of making sure you get a whole week's feed.
There is another way, of course, to get to the top of the feeds, and that's you pay them. But we're not in that territory. Shall we go to the graphs on page 21, 22, 23? So, a few meetings ago, last August, we changed our opening hours, where we extended our restricted Friday opening to a Thursday. And at that point, I say, when I've got some information, I'll come back to committee. So I've been a little bit cruel, because I've presented you with lots of, it's not raw data, but graphs. With not a huge amount of narrative, because I thought it'd be good for everybody to look at them. But my reading of this data, and you may have different ones, the most significant one for me, one of my concerns when we did this squeezing of our service, or public access, was that Tuesday and Wednesday would be overwhelmed. Because that's Tuesday and Wednesday is when we tell people that we can only guarantee you a seat if you book in advance, but people can still turn up. Thursday and Friday, they have to book a seat and the documents they're going to use in advance. So I thought we might shift it too much, but it's not. Page 23, we've been keeping a log of people who haven't been able to get the booking of when they want. This log, one caveat to it, it's only that one interaction, so there's no information if somebody hasn't been able to get a booking and then has rung us up another day and made another booking, which I suspect has happened in lots of these cases. But I think 3.16, there's been 100 people who, for whatever reason, haven't been able to accommodate it when they've wanted, and 28 of those have been because the search room was full. Not all of those have been most of them are on a Tuesday and Wednesday. One or two have been on a Thursday and Friday, which is good because people are obviously using the service on the Thursday and Friday, as you see from graph 313. Very erratic in terms of the numbers we get on a Thursday and Friday. Some weeks where we're getting a full day and a busy day following it. Other weeks we're getting, but if you look at I think the block of data after January 2025 compared to what it was in 2023-24, it's more compressed. We're getting busy days, busy weeks a lot, and we're not getting so many quiet days, but we're not getting that many days when we can't accommodate anybody. So in some ways, one could argue that actually we're using our resources better. Because when we're operating the search room, we don't have staff sit there with 3 or 4 people in, we get more people coming in, so they're providing the service. I mean, I'd like to be open more hours, there's no doubt about it.
Just a quick one. How do our hours compare with other record office, like, for example, Oxford, their record office?
I don't know Oxford off the top of my head, but some have got many more hours. Lots are similar to us, ballpark sort of figures, 30, 20 odd hours per week, because lots of services have been squeezed over the years. Yeah, I mean, there's also the fact that the market has changed, in that we are nowhere near as busy as we were 15 years ago, because family history is it's more popular than it was 15 years ago, but of course people are doing it online. One of the areas which I've been slightly disappointed in, I must admit, is that the huge boom in family history with the commercial websites, which are, I think Ancestry was sold the other year for over $1 billion. You know, it's big business. Hasn't translated into people coming and using the search room. And I think one of the issues with that is back to what I was saying about volunteer projects, in that you go onto, say, Ancestry, and you type in somebody's name and where they were from and roughly when they were born, it gives you lots of data. Whereas you come and use our catalogue and you type in somebody's name, chances are you're going to get nothing, which is relevant to you, because it's just, you know, it is a search. One of the reasons for that is we don't have that level of data in it. So, for example, if that person had been in Great Yarmouth Prison, yeah, in the jail books, before the volunteer project, you typed in the name, you wouldn't find anything. Whereas that sort of data is on Ancestry. So people who are used to that experience aren't getting it when they come and try to use traditional archive catalogues. There's no quick fix to that, but I think it's an area where we need to do more work. There's a huge need to catalogue collections in the traditional way where we don't go down very low. But I think there is a need for certain collections to think about ways which we can create that sort of data. And when we've got enough of it, sharing it. So one of the things which we have done is we shared all our metadata about wills with Ancestry. I haven't found my past, I think. And they've put that metadata onto their indexes, so they come up in searches, but they don't have the images. So people then have to contact us through our digitalisation on demand service, and they order wills, copies of wills for us through that stream. And that's our largest area of activity on our online digitalisation on demand service, which is great because it brings in income, but also, you know, provides a different means of access. So we get orders from all over the world because they get a lot of use, their catalogues. So I think, you know, to summarise my feeling on the data, I think it's going okay, our change to opening hours. We haven't had any huge problems. Disappointing, you know, we were in this position before where people would love us to be open on, a few people would love us to be open on Saturdays, but, you know, that even when we were busy, we were open on Saturdays many years ago, but we were very quiet. So we have alternative means of access, which we didn't have then as well.
Just looking at the Thursday and Friday activity, what's the limit to the number of documents that can be ordered in advance now, and has that altered much?
Yeah, we upped it by 50%. I can't remember the exact figures because...
has it worked all right, or are people being frustrated because...
I think it's improved things. It's improved things. We've got some regular users who like to have a few more documents, so it does open up a little bit wider, yeah. And we can cope with that, so it's worked well. Yeah.
So how many can people order in advance?
I think it's 6, yeah. Which is good for lots of users. I mean, I'm looking at 2 people here, 3 people who are frequent users of the search room, and you're the type of user who tends to perhaps have one document and spend a long time with it. But there are other types of use. I don't know. You're trying to trace somebody, a history of a property for electoral registers, where you don't go for them year by year. You do something a bit wiser than that, where you look at them for every other decade or something and narrow it down. But that wouldn't be suitable for a Thursday or Friday, because you order 5 documents and you get some hits, and then you need to order another 5 more and that sort of thing. So it's not ideal in terms of public service, but there is the Tuesday and Wednesday when that service is available.
Yes, I was disappointed to discover that the way the room's now organised, the access to the Norfolk Norwich Archaeological Society library is not possible on those days. And presumably that's because of the need for security and oversight, but it is disappointing.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. Yeah, it'd be nice to make these, but it is because we're running the limited service and we have to maintain security. Yeah. Shall I move on to conservation? So this is another, interesting snippet. So over the summer, Professor Tim Stinson from North Carolina State University visited us. It was originally going to be a large project, but the President of the United States cut the funding. So he ended up making other arrangements, because, dedicated professional. But what he was looking at was taking DNA samples for eraser rubbings. I think it's nothing intrusive. They don't cut little corners off of documents, wouldn't allow that. But looking at animal breeds and changing, and supposedly they can look at weather conditions from looking at this sort of material. So he came over for a week and we sort of facilitated him. So interesting to see and he's using other collections and comparing it. But Norfolk is often chosen for these sort of things because, well, I suppose our location, but also the extent of our collection.
When do you hope to hear from him again with his findings?
I don't know.
The animal breedings, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
No.
I don't know.
Well, you will.
I'm sure it will be featured in an academic journal at some stage, yeah. Um, 3.21 is just detailing some of the work we've been doing towards the exhibitions. We had previously, and this will go back in at some stage, an exhibition on the education, outreach and wellbeing work which we do at the Record Office, which I know one of our substitute members went and visited last time, because the substitute member for Councillor Nurdon was featured in the exhibition. There's a picture of her in it. So she went over afterwards, I think, and had a look. But that's not in there at the moment, because we're hosting an exhibition for the Wise Archive, which is a long-running oral history project based in Norwich, and they've been doing an exhibition on Wensum Lodge. Basically, they're hiring the space, and we did a little bit of paid work for them to put some documents in, but they're using the space. Nice exhibition. We've also done some external work, so we've been doing some loans to the Sainsbury Centre for their Can the Seas Survive exhibition programme, and for Cardiff Castle's couple of exhibitions. We tend to do lots of the mounting work for them because we've got very good paper conservators. And currently, this isn't featured on here because this is one of the things which is a little bit more up to date. We've got an exhibition. It's a travelling exhibition. It's a pop-up stand called Following the Fish. So it's an exhibition. We were partnering in a project in the Highlands of Scotland, which secured money from Lloyd's for this exhibition. And it's about the herring girls, where they followed the fish around the coast. I think it's about 6,000 women at one stage were travelling down to East Anglia and following the shows of fish. It's one of the things I've learned from the exhibition, the speed they used to fill it, gut the fish. They could do many fish in a single minute. Because they were paid by the barrel, as piece rates. So, yeah. But an interesting exhibition, yeah. There were very sharp knives as well, because one of the things, I think in the exhibition, they're talking about the things they used to bring with them, but one was a sharpening stone. I don't know the owner for their knives, because, tools of the trade. Next section is dealing with the accessions which we've received. 3.22 talks about the accreditation, which I mentioned on the risk register. 3.2324 is about their accessions. A few highlights there. I thought it was nice to get the King's Lynn Public Library plans, because obviously King's Lynn, there's lots of work going on for a new library, which, is it next year it opens? Yeah, right in the centre of town. Yeah. And there's a full appendix of all the accessions we've received at the back of the report. 3.25 is about our lottery-funded hallmarks project. So we received a grant of around about £250,000 from the National Lottery Heritage Fund and £5,000 from the Norfolk Archives and Heritage Development Foundation. So that money which people give to the supporters scheme and that sort of thing, you know, has helped us. It's always good to be going to the lottery with funding from another source as well. We also got £250 from NARG, which again shows the Norfolk Archaeological and Historical Research Group. So we're at the stage now, we've had permission to start, we've advertised for staff, and we've recruited. It says here, you know, we had over 400 applicants for 3 roles. Shortlisting was a lot of stuff. But we've recruited 3 people. I think we've recruited what's going to be an excellent team. You know, I was really pleased with the end of it. And they're due to start, touch wood, on the 3rd of November. So we have their desks prepared and we're ordering the equipment for them. And then I think 2 contracts are for 18 months, 1 for 16 months, and they will hit the ground. Now, I'm not going to give you all the details of what the project is, because I thought it would be good for the people involved to come and give you a presentation during a committee meeting. So I haven't told the project manager that yet. But yeah, for no, you know, and also when there's a bit more going on. So. Then 3.28 is talking about Nora again, and it's been helping us buy some documents. There's some of the documents which have made a contribution to buying there. And next 6 monthly report, I'll be reporting on a much larger purchase, which we're in the process of making. The supporter scheme currently got 121 members, 105 individuals, 11 community groups, and 3 memberships have been given as a gift to people. And then 3.30, front of our building, we rent space out to the registration service, number of years. They would really like to open on a Saturday. Problem is, we aren't there on a Saturday. So I said to them, well, yeah, as long as we can meet certain criteria, really relating to security in our building, because I'm not happy to have our building, people coming into our building, unsetting the alarms, and us not being there. So we've done this work already. We have changed the alarm system, so that's possible. You know, they can unset their little bit, but the rest of it is still fully alarmed, so it's secure. So we have at that level, we've got the CCTV cameras, that sort of high level of security around it. It's a low space, and also it's a long space, which, you know, at the end of the day, that sort of thing. So there's going to be a partition put up at the end of the long gallery, so we can physically block off that space, which, you know, registrars are funding this work because they need it. So, and I've been being as accommodating as possible. But that work, we don't have an exact date yet. I keep chasing for it. But it's going to be disruptive. So in December, it's planned for, we're going to need to close the search room for a couple of weeks. December is the ideal time to do it because it's the quietest period in the year. But it will, and obviously as soon as we know the date, we're going to send out as much publicity and let people know. My plan is that the green room we can still use, because it will be the long gallery people going through, so we can still have events in the green room, and there are various things planned. And that will, you know, enable county councils to carry on providing services on a Saturday. That's almost the end of my report, but there's one other little thing, because while I've been sat here, I've reposted it today, and I've had a load more orders through. On the 14th of November, we're holding a conference at the Record Office, called Change Minds, Using Archives to Improve Mental Health. And it's a half-day conference, and we've got Professor Sally Hardy from the Niche Project at the UEA coming to speak and do a keynote, and then lots of me speaking about Change Minds. But also we've got some experts by experience. One of them is doing a personal view of Change Minds when they attended the Dr. Hill's Casebook project, and we've got some videos of work people have done and that sort of thing. And I'm yeah, we're still receiving lots of, I think we've got about 140 people booked so far. So there's a lot.
What date is that?
14th of November.
I was going to ask you about an update of Changed Minds.
Yeah.
14th of
November.
Thank you very much.
And that's the end of my report, Chair.
Any questions? I have one comment to make. Any further questions? No? No. Well, I just wanted to ask about, going back to 3.7, the song Detectorist. Tell me about the Milam Singers. I don't know anything about that.
As far as I know, it was a book, the village choir attached to the church, I think.
It was the church.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. And they, whoever was leading it, collected various songs and wrote them down in the book. So
That date is,
yeah, it's 18th century music. Yeah. So
it would be probably the church choir. Yes.
possibly, I don't know off the top of my head. Mind you, if you go on BBC Sounds and look at Radio 3 or type in "song detectorists," you'll be able to listen to the programme.
Yes, that's very interesting. Well, if there are no further questions, as a committee, we're asked to note the contents of the report and comment accordingly, which I think we have done. I believe
I should have bought them station. Isn't that what the chair does?
and